Welcome to the Lay Low Pod, the podcast that keeps it real while you figure things out. I'm Erin, and let's lay low. If you're in a season of becoming where life doesn't look how it used to, but not quite how it will, you're in the right place. Sometimes to grow, you have to lay low. Hello. Welcome to the Lay Low Pod. My name is Erin, and thank you for joining me this week. It is the weekend right now. Some weekends are lay low weekends, as you know, where I have a really good, solid balance of no plans and plans. That's really how I prefer to have a weekend at home. But this weekend is a go-go weekend. It's just some weekends are lay low weekends, and some weekends are go-go weekends. And I'm sure that you can relate to that. But this is just one of those busy weekends. I had some friends in town, which was really fun. It's very rare that I have friends stay with me, maybe because I don't invite many people to stay with me. But if you do, you are definitely on a very short list. And my friend Shanae and Ammon from St. George came and stayed with me just 2 nights. And we just have such a really special friendship. We've been friends since that little one stoplight town, really. We had little tiny babies together. I remember taking her dinner when she had her 3rd baby. She just had 3 kids really, really close together. And so we had mutual friends, and then we played Bonko together. And then she was actually the one who got me into Perfectly Posh, the skincare company. I learned a ton from her about, organization and systems. So she's a special friend in my life, and her husband, just really good friends with both of them. So they were here, and it was just fun. We spent a lot of time on the patio in the backyard, and we just talk. And she was talking about the podcast, and she had really specific feedback that she wanted to discuss. And it was so interesting sitting with her for hours. And she was there for me during a lot of these stories. And she was piecing things together and asking specific questions about stories that I've told here. But she had just such great feedback that I took a ton of notes, and I'm excited for some of the things that she is wanting to hear. She gave me a lot of questions. Remember, guys, if you want to hear an answer to any question, just go to laylowpod.com and you'll be able to submit your question for me to answer, and also apply if you want to be a guest. We had several people apply to be guests this week. You're going to get your very first Lay Low guest next week. I'm excited about that. It's on the calendar. And yeah, to pray for me that I'm going to know how to do all the technology stuff, because that is just not my forte. But this is a just good topic this week. I haven't really prepared a whole lot about it. I've thought about it, but I don't really have notes. So we're going to just see where this goes. But I want to talk about 5 things that I'm just not worrying about anymore in my life, and how freeing that makes me to think of, and how much peace that it gives me kind of letting some of these things go. So just want to kind of jump into it today. The first thing that I am not worrying about anymore is I don't want to worry about being perfect anymore. I said this last week. The Mormon Church is tied to a quest for perfection, and whether or not people recognize that or not, some do, some don't, but sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you don't really see it. But when I was living my young Mormon housewife days in that one stoplight town, I just put so much pressure on myself to be the perfect wife, the perfect mom, and just having everything together. It wasn't really something that I was comparing myself to other people necessarily. I really just was doing it because that's the mom that I wanted to be, because that is the mom that I saw growing up. My mom just really had it together. My mom had certain routines that I grew up with. For example, she would go grocery shopping 1 day a week. Every Friday, she would go to the grocery store. She had this white notepad, the same white notepad, and she made her entire list. She planned out every meal that she was going to make over the next week, and she made sure every ingredient that she needed was on this list. And on Fridays, she would drag us to Tom Thumb in Dallas. Was the grocery store that she shopped at and the one that I eventually worked at, but she would drag us there and we would do our grocery shopping. And just one time a week, she just had it together. She knew exactly what she needed. She knew everything she was going to cook, and she just made a game plan and she went forward with it. The second thing that my mom did routinely was she did all of the laundry on Mondays. And so we would have to take our laundry down to the laundry room on Sunday night, or else the laundry wasn't getting done. And she would get all the laundry done, fold it, put it back in our basket. So by the time, after dinner, we had our clean laundry and it was our job to put it away Monday night. And she stayed on us about she was doing her part, she was doing the laundry, we had to do our part putting everything away, but everything was washed and put away in one day. And there were 3 kids in the house. So those were 2 things that I tried to do early on in my marriage, where I just saw my mom doing these 2 things and I thought, okay, I go to the grocery store on Friday, I do my laundry on Monday, and I've really tried for years to follow this routine. And it doesn't sound like much, but it puts so much pressure on me. And I think back and remember, I went back to work with when Troy was 2 weeks old. I took him to the office 5 days a week. He had a little crib in the office. And I remember just getting up in the mornings, getting him ready, getting myself ready, and going to work. And I really did love that routine. But while I was becoming this working mom, I was also running a household, and we had very strong gender roles in my marriage where I handled the domestic tasks. I was typically just happy to do them. That was an expectation really in my head that that's just kind of what the wife does, what the woman does. But I was trying to work and I was also trying to be the mom that my mom was. But guess what? My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't work outside the home. And yeah, she was busy with running us kids around and she did volunteer work and she had things that kept her busy, but she was not going to an office every day with expectations and performing tasks while being a mom. So it took me a few years to really connect that I just could not do that anymore. And I couldn't expect myself to be the perfect mom that my mom really was. It just puts so much pressure on me. So I would say Troy was probably 6 or 7. So I did this for years and years where I was just torturing myself, trying to do everything, have the kids, perfectly put together in their little matching outfits. Yes, I was that mom who had my boys in matching outfits at least until Troy was 5. I was always picking out things that they could wear together, but I was just trying to be this perfect mom and really handling all of the household tasks while working and doing the majority of the day-to-day motherhood things. And when I decided to stop that, I remember specifically telling myself, I literally cannot go to the grocery store once a week. I don't even know what my life is going to be in 3 days. So I need to just kind of look at things 2 days at a time. So I went to the grocery store every 2 days. Sometimes I was going to the grocery store every day. And it took that pressure off myself that I could make changes and I didn't have to follow this form that I put that expectation on myself. It's not like my mom was telling me you need to be the mom that I was. That was something that I put onto myself. So it was exhausting being perfect. I was trying to be the perfect Mormon mom. So in the Mormon church, they have something called family home evening where you are encouraged, expected, whatever you want to say, to bring your family together every Monday night. And you would have some sort of spiritual lesson and an activity and a treat. And you just kind of like brought your family together for this little Monday night connection point. And I would meet up with other moms my age and we would plan these nights and we would print off print-offs and laminate them and cut them off. And we put so much effort into this little Monday night powwow with our family. And now looking back, I think, oh my gosh, I was just trying to do everything that was expected of me. And maybe there are people who are in a high functioning religion where you don't put that pressure on yourself. If that's you, maybe religion is a better fit for you. But for me, I just couldn't disconnect that. It just put so much pressure on myself to be perfect. And I robbed myself of a lot of experiences and opportunities with my boys where I was not patient. I was expecting way too much from little kids. And that is something that I have had to forgive myself on, that I was really a kid raising kids. You think about it, I became a mom when I was 22 and I was just growing up myself. So I really think Troy, my oldest, and I really grew up together. I tell him still that he was kind of my trial child where I was trying everything out and I made mistakes and we still laugh about things. He was there the other day and we were laughing about something and I'm glad he can laugh now because I've put myself through a lot, be feeling pressure about some of the things that I decided to do as a parent that I would not do now. But luckily those kids know that I was doing my best. Hopefully they know I was doing my best. So now I am far from perfect and I love not being perfect. That's something that I've embraced. I am not perfect, but I am real. And I don't expect perfectionism anywhere in my life. I don't expect my kids to be perfect. We have a very open dialogue where they can talk to me about literally anything. They are never in trouble with me. I want them to always come to me, talk to me about what they're thinking, going through, and admit that, like, yeah, we're figuring things out as we go, and there's nothing wrong with that. And in my next relationship, I am not expecting perfectionism either. And that was something in my marriage where I was probably pretty hard on my husband because I had all of these church expectations that I wanted him to be perfect. I wanted him to be following all of the expectations in the Mormon church that they told me created a happy life, a happy relationship. And I did put pressure on him for that. And that is something that I am so far away from now. And in my dating experiences now, I will say I do not expect perfection. Oh my God. Like, I don't want you to be perfect. I expect honesty. And that is kind of the pivot that I have made. I don't need anybody to be perfect. I actually think that's kind of boring, but I do expect people to be honest with me and transparent with me, and that is important for me going forward. The second thing I am not worrying about is I am not worrying about what people are doing. And I spent a lot of my early motherhood days really judging people around me because I was in this Mormon community. Everybody knew what everybody was up to. In a small town with one stoplight, everybody knows what you're doing based on your car. They know where your car is, if it's at the grocery store, if it's at the library, if it's wherever it is, people know where you are. And there's literally nothing to do down there. That there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time thinking about what you are up to. And that was just the reality I was in. And I felt that I had eyes on me and I was always just trying to be that perfect person who didn't mess up. And I really did look down to people. That's not something that I'm proud of either. There were really judgmental times in my life. I remember one story. Oh, there was a guy in our neighborhood who was a diehard BYU fan. And he would have the BYU flag flying out in the yard every week for game day and he'd have his jerseys on and he was a diehard BYU fan. We all knew that. And I was a BYU alumni. We had season tickets to football games and I was just as excited to be cheering on the BYU Cougars during this time. And then one day, this neighbor, instead of BYU flags in his yard, there were University of Utah flags, which, if you don't know, that is the big, big rival of BYU. And I was just so floored. I was like, what in the world is happening? He's a BYU fan. Why is all of a sudden he a Utah fan? And we talked to him and he was just like, yeah, I'm over it. BYU disappoints me. I am just miserable being a BYU fan. And now I'm a Utah fan. So basically overnight, he decided he changed his mind. He does not like the Cougars. He wants to be a Ute fan. And going forward, that was who he cheered for. And I judged this man. Oh my God. But in my head, I was just like, who is he? And how can he just flip flop like that? How can he just change his mind? And there's no loyalty. I was just so hung up on the loyalty. I'm like, who is this guy? I judged him like crazy. And now I think back on that and I'm like, awesome. Like he was brave. He changed his mind. Something didn't work for him. And then he just made a pivot and he's happy. And why did I even care what football team he was cheering for? That's one thing that I think now, like I could care less. I almost love people when they change their mind because I think it's brave of them. And I think, yeah, something wasn't working for you. You took it into your hands. You changed it. Another situation, there was a friend in the neighborhood who was messing around with a guy who was in high up leadership in our Mormon religion. So really, in the Mormon church, you go to your church based on your address, and that determines what time you go to church and what building you go to church. It's very systematic. You don't have a choice, and that is what you do. So you kind of have like your local leadership, but then all of the local leadership responds to a higher up leadership, kind of more in like your county. Think of it as something like that. So this guy was in the higher up leadership, and oh my God, he thought he was just the best. And he would get up there at the pulpit and just like, it was just so fake and just spouting off about, all the important church things. Yet I knew exactly what he was doing in his personal time with my friend, and him being disloyal and lying. And I would sit in that meeting room at church and look up at him, and I had such like angry feelings at him. I thought, oh my God, like how is this man standing up there having this double life? Like I had zero respect for him. I'd look at his wife and be like, oh my God, poor thing. Like I just completely judged this man, and he had no idea that I knew what was going on. And now looking back, I think, my God, he was really in a situation. I bet he's not proud of how he handled that, and hopefully he's made peace with that. But why was I so concerned about what he was doing? And the answer is I was literally so bored in this one stoplight town. I know that was part of my problem because I was not being mentally stimulated in any way in this town where I was bored. And when I was bored, I just kind of got involved in some of the drama. And that's something too that like I have just completely let go of. I am not worrying about it in my neighborhood now. I truly only know the people who have dogs, and I only know their dogs' names. And I've lived here for going on 6 years, and I still don't know anybody's names. And I just wave and smile as they drive by, and they could care less what I'm up to. I could care less what they're up to. I just don't want to worry what people are up to anymore. And I don't want people to worry about what I'm up to anymore. And I just want to release that and let people live their lives. It literally has no impact on me. I think about now, even just people's political opinions, people's religious opinions, people's sexuality, like who they're dating, who they're sleeping with. Like, why does that even affect me at all? Why would I ever have an opinion about that? I care about people being good, kind people, and that can look a lot of ways. And when you're not expecting people to be perfect and you're not worrying about what they're doing, you can just leave room to love them. And that's the person that I want to be, and that's who I want to be going forward. And it feels so much more aligned for me to just love people, accept them. And I always want my home to be a place where people can just be themselves. They don't have to be perfect. I don't have any huge expectations of them other than let's just be good humans and let's be good to each other. And I always want my home to be a place, I tell the boys too, with their friends. Their friends will kind of like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I'm like, you can be whoever you are at my house. Like, I never want you to censor yourself. I want you to be who you are. I want you to say what you want to say and know that there's no wrong answers in this home. And that is important to me. The third thing is I don't worry about following a timeline. My parents are still married. They've been married for 52 years. But when I was born, all of my grandparents were divorced and remarried. So when I came into the world, I didn't have any grandparents married to each other. It was just my life. I never thought twice about it. And it just felt like there was more love because I had all 8 grandparents instead of 4. So it was just my normal life. And I think that early on, I just figured out that lots of people had married grandparents, but that was just not how it was with my family. But I loved my grandparents. I loved my step grandparents from a time I was born. That was just who loved me and who supported me. And I love that. But thinking of that too, they were on their own timelines, and our family looked a little different. Our family was a little blended, and this was both my mom's parents and my dad's parents, and I think that's possibly why my parents have been so committed to staying married, and it is because they never wanted to put their kids through what they went through. And I actually talked to my parents, both of them, about coming on the podcast separately to talk about some of their changes in their life and how they've adapted to it. And I know specifically things that I want to talk to them about. So I hope that they take me up on that. But I learned that my timeline is my timeline, and I am just letting that go, that it doesn't look like everybody else's sometimes. I was married really young, and I had a relationship that ran its course. And I think 15 years being married is an accomplishment. I don't think that it is only an accomplishment if you're married your entire life. That's just not something that I believe in. I think that you can have chapters. I think you can have act 1, act 2 of your play, act 3, and really just own your story in such a beautiful way that involves numerous experiences and numerous people. And I've accepted that that's what my timeline looks like, and I'm proud of that, and I own it. And I feel very lucky that I can be happy on my different timelines. And yes, it might not look like what everybody else's lives look like and marriages look like, and that's okay with me. I'm willing to be brave and create a life that just works for me and my alignment. But during my divorce, I remember my aunt telling me that I was the first cousin to get divorced. She said, you're the very first cousin to get divorced. And I said, well, I would guess that I won't be the last. And I am not the only one right now. Very few cousins on that side have been divorced, but at the same time, I felt like I don't need to be put into this expectation that I am less than because I'm different. I'm less than because my relationship lasted 15 years instead of 52. Like, what world does that mean that that's not a completion of a relationship? I just think we can kind of change some of these narratives and going forward, look at relationships and timelines as something that just runs its course and that you take the lessons that you can move forward from. But even with my career completely changing, the direction of my career in my 40s is something that I felt that was a little different, because most people in my life have stayed in the same industry, a lot of people at the same job and doing the same thing. And that's just not the way my career has gone. And I've learned that I'm definitely okay with that. And sometimes life doesn't happen according to plan, and that's okay. I'm doing things my way. I'm doing things when and how I want. Number 4, I don't worry about having it all figured out. And when I was a young Mormon mom, I placed so much control on certainty. And I think it was just that part of me that wanted stability, that wanted security. I had that my whole life with my parents. And I felt that when it was time for me to get married, that was just something that came with marriage, was security and certainty. And I learned very early on, through experiences that will come up later, that my life was just going to be different. The certainty that I saw in my parents' relationship for so long, I just didn't have that from such an early time in my marriage. And I think about being such a young wife and not having a lot of that security, and it makes me sad for her. But also, I think that is part of what has made me so strong, because I learned that, okay, this is not a relationship where I'm just going to be able to sit back and just be the wife and take care of the house and the kids, and everything was going to just be figured out for me in such a cookie cutter way. That was my idea going into my marriage, but I learned very quickly that that was just not how it was going to be, and that was okay with me as well. I was happy working, and I was happy just figuring things out as I went. And I think during the divorce, that's when I just had to just like let it go, let it be, and kind of turn it over to God and the universe. But I remember during that time just like crying and saying out loud, I wish I could just have a crystal ball to tell me that everything is going to be fine. I didn't need to know exactly what it looked like, but I wanted to know that I was going to be okay. I wanted to know I was going to feel security again. I was going to feel certainty again. And what I had to do during this time is to take that pressure off of I need to know that I'm going to be okay and turn it into I need to know that I can trust myself that whatever happens, I will be okay because I will figure it out. And I had to really shift that story to myself. And that was such a scary time where I felt really alone, and having to figure things out on my own was scary. But I know that is where I grew a lot. And I still tell myself that I have 100% track record of figuring things out. And when I am faced with a challenge now, I look at it so differently where I don't really need to know the certainty about it. I just know that I got this and I'm going to find the solution. And I have a lot of people in my life to help talk through situations and get advice. And if I need that, it's there, but I'm still really trusting myself with my own decisions, that I don't need to have outside sources to tell me that my decision is right or wrong, that I can really decide things on my own. And I tell myself too that everything is figure outable, and especially with work. I mean, I'm dealt with situations every single day where I'm problem solving, and I just tell myself, okay, this is figure outable. It's going to get figured out. And I can trust myself to get all the facts, make a decision that's best for me, and just move forward and be confident in that decision. And I'm okay just figuring things out as I go. I am okay with that. I actually think it's beautiful and it works for me where I don't have to have the whole big picture figured out. I just need to know what's right in front of me and make little steps every day towards the life that I am dreaming of. I also think in this season right now, I am just learning to let things go so that the universe can bring me everything I've ever wanted. And I don't always know what's best for me. You know, my last relationship, I was confident that that was something that I could do long term. And yes, we had issues, but it was stuff that I could figure out because I loved him. But now looking back, I am so grateful that I let that go to the universe and trusted the universe to make the moves behind the scenes for me to have my best life, for me to get to experience my greatest love and to have a life that I'm really excited about and proud of. And I wouldn't have trusted the universe. I would be getting married next weekend. And I just think, thank God that that is not what the universe wanted for me. And thank God that I get to have another chance to get things right. I don't need to always know exactly how it's going to look like, but I know what it's going to feel like, and I can make those steps towards something that feels good in my life. Number 5, I don't worry about being understood by everybody. That is just definitely something that I have had to let go. I remember hearing one time that you could be the juiciest peach in the whole world. You could be in the orchard in the most perfect, beautiful peach, and still somebody's going to come up and not like peaches. They're not going to want to have a taste of you because they don't like peaches. And it has nothing to do with you. It's just a matter of fact. I might not be everybody's cup of tea, but guess what? I can be the right people's shot of whiskey. That's one of those things that you see on people's hats and shirts. But I think that just ties to expectations where just naturally we put expectations on people. We put labels on people of what we want them to be in our life. And it's not necessarily fair because they are not living for us. They should be living their own life. They should be living a life that they're proud of. And I should be doing the exact same thing. And I think now that I am, 9 episodes into this podcast, and I have started to speak my voice. And remember, my very first episode, I said I was nervous about telling some stories and how it would affect people. I can tell you 9 weeks later, I have kind of just released a lot of that. And I've thought, okay, I might tell a story and somebody might not like it. And I am going to be okay with that because I have a right to tell my experiences, and my experiences are from my point of view. And this is how it happened for me. And it might look different for somebody else who was in the situation. And I do think there's basically three sides of every story. If it was between a man and a woman, there's his story, her story, and the truth that lies in the middle. I think we just naturally, human nature, remember experiences that affect us because that's what's on the front of our mind. And I think we remember things in a way that protects us. And I don't think that is a bad thing. I think that is a self-protection thing, and I think everybody does it, but this podcast, my voice, these stories are exactly what happened in my mind. And I'm not saying that that is 100% what happened in somebody else's view, but it's my view. And that is just, I have a right to tell my story from my own views. So this podcast has been really good for me, not worrying about people understanding me all the time. And I am just definitely okay with that. And I think too, we think that people are thinking about us. We think that people are worrying about us. But guess what? Everybody is just worrying about themselves. Everybody is really in self protection mode, survival mode. So I think if we just kind of let that go and realize that people are going to think whatever they're going to think about you, and it's none of your business. That is about them. They're viewing you from their lens in a way that affects how they see themselves. And there is so much projection going on in our world right now that I think the more you can just release that and not argue with people and just live your life in a way that you're proud of and let go of the thoughts of what anybody else thinks about it. And I'm going into a time in my life where I am just really trying to not think about those things and just think, you know what, if there's people in my life who love and adore me and who are cheering me on, they're just going to let me trust my own decisions too. Because guess what? My decisions don't affect them. What I'm doing in my life doesn't affect them. So hopefully I can let them make their decisions. They can let me make my decisions, and we can just respect those things. So the older I get, I am just less interested in proving myself, and I'm more interested in just being myself. I am going to say over and over that I am in a season of alignment where I know exactly who I am. I know exactly the life that I envision for myself and my family and my future relationship. And I am perfectly fine just making decisions for myself that continue to put me on the path towards that life, and trusting that the right opportunities, the right people, the right situations are going to meet me along the path. And about 6 months ago, somebody asked me, what are your dreams? What do you see your life? And 6 months ago, I said, I don't know what it looks like, but I know what it feels like. And since that answer, it was a wake up call to me to think, okay, Erin, you know what it's going to feel like, but what's it going to look like? And really getting serious about visualizing the life that I see ahead for me. I'm 44. I feel like I have the best years of my life ahead of me. And it's beautiful to think about what that could look like. But if I sit and think about, are people in my world going to understand my decisions? A lot of them might, but I am getting myself to a place where I can be 100% confident with who I am and the decisions I'm making and what I want for myself going forward, that I can just release some of those feelings of needing to know what people think about my life. And I encourage this in my boys as well. All of these things that I'm saying that I'm not worrying about, I want my boys to not worry about them just as much. I hope that they listen to this and think, okay, I want to learn some of these lessons earlier on than my mom did. And I want to learn some of these lessons without having to sacrifice relationships and people in order to learn the lessons. So I don't know if you were a person like me 20 years ago who was so concerned about a lot of things that didn't matter, or if you are more like me now where you just don't let things bother you. Wherever you are on the spectrum, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter where you live or what the situation is, you can make choices and release some of these worries, release some of these things, and just decide today, I'm just going to work harder at not worrying about being perfect, or I'm just going to work a little harder about not worrying what people think about me. And find the things that trigger you, find the things that you struggle with, and make a little 1% change towards letting that go. We don't have to have it all figured out right away, but if we make little changes and catch some of our thoughts quicker, you can retrain your brain to let some of these things go. And I believe that because I have done it. I have gone from one extreme to the other on a lot of these things. And I feel so grateful that I can spend the rest of my life not judging people, not worrying about what they're doing, not trying to be perfect, not expecting people in my life to be perfect. I can let it go that I need everybody to like me. It's very realistic that a lot of people aren't going to like me because I do speak up for myself and I do speak my mind, and a lot of people can't handle that, and I need to let that go, but I can't change that about myself. So some of these lessons that I've learned, I want you to think about, what in your life do you want to let go of? What are some of the things that you can stop worrying about in your life, or at least lighten up a little bit, be a little easier on yourself, give yourself a little bit of grace, and look at life and your relationships a little bit different? That's what I'm encouraging you guys to do today. So thank you for laying low with me today. Keep sending in your guest applications to the website, laylowpod.com. And it's been really fun to read your submissions. And yes, get ready for your very first guest next week with somebody who I love and adore and who I have learned a lot from in my life. So I think you are going to really, really love that episode next week. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.